I was this morning thinking about what I'm going to talk about for meditation, as I sometimes do on Thursday mornings, and was scrolling through my news feed. And Google knows that I'm interested in stuff like this. So one of the articles that came up was the 5 pillars of, I can't remember if it was happiness or a great life, according to Carl Jung. And I would not consider myself at all an expert on Jung, but I read a little bit, and some of it makes perfect sense to me, and some of it does not. But I'm a big fan of when we can break something as complicated as life, or as complicated as what happiness seems to be sometimes, into 5 pillars. You guys all know the 5 ways of becoming great at martial arts. These are the 5 pillars of a great life or happiness. And some of them are at least somewhat related to things that we talk about all the time in class. I'm going to go through them and give my 2 cents on each one of them. And this is by no means an exhaustive list on all the things that we need to do or should do to be happy or to have a great life. But these are a pretty good 5 to break it down to. So the first one is good physical and mental health. And that's all. Just have good physical and mental health. Don't be in pain all the time just randomly because you're over 30 years old. Don't be sad. Like just have great mental health. No, but of course there's a degree to which we can assume he doesn't mean like just be perfectly healthy. Of course, it's significantly easier to be happy if you are in no physical pain. I don't know anybody like that, but we're talking about good physical health. It's not perfect physical health. I'm decent enough, right? And if I've got something that I'm clearly not taking care of, I'll take care of it. So if I need to get a surgery or really pay attention to something because my back hurts all the time, it's going to be very hard to have a great life or to be happy if you've got some kind of chronic pain or illness. So deal with that. Mental health. I've got to get therapy. I got to talk to somebody. I'm in a situation where there's something I really need to take care of for my own mental health, for my sanity. Great, take care of it. So it really makes sense that as a pillar, it's a very important thing for the rest of everything to go well, physical and mental health. I don't think there's much else to say about that, so I'm going to move on. Good personal and intimate relationships, such as marriage, family, friendships. So this is having a great community around you. This is having at least one person, I think, that you can really share things with. And if you don't have good relationships, of course, sometimes you'll be looking at other people with envy and thinking, I wish I had their relationship. But this is more about like, do I just have that foundational thing, this pillar that's kind of helping me to support the rest of life? And there are lots of ways that we can go about this, and really important ideas that go along with keeping great relationships. I think this is one of the great things about the dojo, is whether you you consider yourself to be like in a relationship or to be in a friendship with somebody in the dojo or not, there's still clearly this kind of community, this feeling of everyone's kind of got your back, everyone's interested in your health and well-being, and everyone is kind of if nothing else, kind of putting their best foot forward to try to help each other when they're on the mats. And you got to have places like that and people like that. For some of us, the dojo is one of the major, if not the major, kind of source of that. Other relationships that you have, other places that you go, maybe it's church or softball league or whatever, but have a group of people and relationships that really are supporting you. Now, the first word in both of these is good. This is good personal and intimate relationships. You have bad relationships, that's not helpful. That is going to take you in the other direction. So I'm not going to tell you that you should just immediately, break up or jettison that person from your life, but there are going to be relationships that really need our attention, and we need to deal with them and improve them or say goodbye. Some of these relationships we can't really choose. We have family, we have people who are going to be in our lives. So do your best to really foster a great positive relationship with them. So we've got good physical and mental health. We've got good personal and intimate relationships. And then we've got 3, the faculty for perceiving beauty in art and nature. Beauty in art and nature. And this is an interesting one. This is not one that I would think of first. I think that if we did Sifu's 5 pillars of having a great life or happiness, I don't know if perceiving beauty in art and nature would be on it, but I agree this is very helpful. And I would probably change it slightly to be like having a sense of awe or wonder. If everything just seems ho-hum, unexciting, the same, if you see, a beautiful sunset and you're just like, who cares? Or if you see something that's not necessarily so obviously beautiful, but you see, something that still kind of helps you to have that feeling of awe and wonder. This is such an important thing to fill our lives with. It's hard to have a great life or to be happy when everything feels just normal and uninteresting. So this is saying that Bruce Lee made famous, but I'm sure he heard it from somebody else first. Before martial arts, a punch was just a punch. While practicing or like in the process of learning martial arts, a punch was much more than a punch. And then after mastery, after a level of mastery, a punch is much more than a punch, right? So before martial arts, this is just like, I don't get it. I don't see what's interesting about this. It's just a punch. And then while I'm practicing and I start to realize, wow, there's so much that's exciting and interesting about this. I can really get enthralled by the details and all of the ways to use different punches and all of that. It's much more exciting and there's a real sense of awe around it. And then I like to think of this last phase, if I have mastery, it's not that the punch is no longer interesting. That may have been what Bruce Lee thought, but it's not what I think. It is now everything is equally as interesting and exciting, or I can really find a sense of awe and be really invested in, present to whatever is going on in life. Not just the things that I really focus on, like a punch, not just the things that are very exciting, but all of the different aspects of life. We have the opportunity to see beauty and really be in awe of that. Number 4 is reasonable standards of living and satisfactory work. So this is kind of like, is it Maslow's pyramid of needs? What? The hierarchy of needs, but they always show it like a pyramid, I think. And at the bottom is like, you got to have a decent, you have to be able to eat and take care of yourself. And this is like probably just above that. You got a reasonable standard of living. This also gets into, if I'm comparing myself to everybody else, many of the happiest people in the happiest countries on the planet are places where everybody is poor, but everyone's poor together. So you're not constantly looking at other people like we are in LA. Somebody driving down the street in a Ferrari and you're thinking, man, I wish I had that car. You drive by somebody's mansion and you think, of course, this person's got this beautiful house. How can I expect to be happy when I live in this shack? Whatever it is, if you are feeling like you don't have a reasonable standard of living or satisfactory work, if you're always thinking like, oh, it would be amazing if I were just a famous actor, they would just pay me millions of dollars to just read lines, and wouldn't that be amazing? So part of it gets into this, we are comparing ourselves and comparing our lives to other people, and you'll never be happy with that. We get into that trap of comparing and contrasting. But really what he's talking about is it's got to be a reasonable standard. If I am constantly stressed out by my job and it is just awful, if the job is just a terrible environment to be in, and that's something that I'm doing day in and day out, it's going to be very hard to be happy. If your standards of living are not great, you're living on the street, you're living in your car, you can't afford to feed yourself, or even you're just a step above that, where it's like I'm able to feed myself, but it's constantly a struggle. I feel like I'm always having to stress and I'm barely making ends meet. I'm really paycheck to paycheck at best. Then that's going to be very hard. So, and look, some of these things are like, well, yeah, of course. If I lived in a nice place and I had a great job, it would be a lot easier to be happy. And I don't have that yet, and it's not as easy as just saying, just get a great job, just have a reasonable standard of living. Of course, it might take really something, and therefore you might say to yourself, like, well, certainly I can't expect to have a great life or to be happy unless I have these things. And you might be right, but again, we're talking about your perception. If your perception is, and look, I know people personally, I'm married to people that are a lawyer and think, I hate my job. And I totally get it. It seems really stressful. I would not be a lawyer at all. But other people would kill to have this job, to be able to go to a place where day in and day out, it's pretty much, I know what I'm going to have to deal with, and I'm getting paid a decent amount of money for it. But it is to you, right? Do you have a reasonable standard of living? Do you have a job that really is reasonable for you? And for some people, you might look at their job and think that's great, but until you really lived it, you don't really know all the baggage that it comes with. So this is for you in your life and the way that works for you. Do you have a reasonable standard of living, satisfactory work? Number 5, the last one is a really big one too. A philosophical religious point of view capable of coping successfully with the vicissitudes of life. And Zelda very kindly printed out a definition of vicissitudes for us: a change of circumstances or fortune, typically one that is unwelcome or unpleasant, alternation between opposite or contrasting things. Vicissitudes, it sounds like it, like vicissitudes. It's like things go like this, and it's when I first heard this, I wasn't even thinking of necessarily the negative connotation or aspect to it. It's just the fact that things oscillate. And if you have no ability to cope with that, you are in big trouble, because it's a guarantee. The only thing you know that is a guarantee is that nothing is a guarantee. It's always going to be oscillating. You're going to be encountering numerous vicissitudes. So if you don't have some kind of a philosophy or a faith or something that helps you deal with that, it's going to be really rough. For me, my martial arts practice and this kind of like Zen point of view really helps me to deal with it. For you and for many people, maybe it's like, I have faith that no matter what happens now, I'm going to end up in heaven, or I'm going to end up someplace awful, but I know what's going to happen and I can deal with the ups and downs. You know that everything is meant to be for a reason. Whatever it is that kind of allows you to deal, great. And you kind of know if you have this or not, because if any change kind of throws you way off and you feel like, I can't handle this, I don't know what it is, then it's going to be really rough. Of course, if nothing ever throws you off and you feel so perfectly Zen all the time, you're not really having the full human experience. So the vicissitudes will still throw you sometimes, and that's okay. That's part of it. But we want to have some kind of a grounded sense of self, something that we can go back to, return to, and know that everything's going to be okay. So Catherine, she was talking about something totally unrelated to this, but she showed me this quote: grace is the absence of the unnecessary. And I thought that is really Zen, the absence of the unnecessary. And the question of the week in the dojo is, what is Zen? And I'll just tell you guys, because there aren't that many of you listening right now. But If you ask a Zen teacher what is Zen, a very common reaction, do you know the answer to this question? No. Do you know what I will do if you ask me what is Zen? Do you know? I'm going to show you because you work here. This is legal. So this is a common way that a Zen teacher will answer the question. Ask me, what is Zen?
What is Zen?
Well, they would go to the face maybe, or they just punch you, right? Thank you. So the experience in that moment of, oh, first of all, it's unexpected usually. I don't know if Sam, you should always expect that I'm going to hit you. But also the physical experience where you are thrust into an experience of Zen because nothing in that moment exists for you other than that physical sensation. And this is part of why martial arts is such a great kind of Zen activity, is because it causes us to be in the moment, in the present. Because we are either getting hit or really in the moment to avoid getting hit, or we are hitting our partner and we have to be really mindful of that, or we're rolling in jiu-jitsu and we got to watch out for getting tapped or not throwing too much power behind a submission. So there is always this kind of sense, there's this immediacy because danger is always right there. And that is one way to look at Zen and one way to experience it. So be careful who you ask what is Zen, because you might get an answer that you won't appreciate necessarily in that moment, but later on maybe you will really appreciate it. But Zen is, on one hand, simply that. It's the absence of the unnecessary. So when you feel that shock and it brings you into the moment, what's gone? Everything else. And everything else really is unnecessary, right? If you're about to get hit, you don't think about what you're going to eat for dinner, because while you're thinking about that, you're getting hit. If you're trying to get out of the way of somebody's punch, or you're trying to escape a choke, and you're thinking about the last time that I did this happened, and I really hope that this doesn't happen again, all of that unnecessary thought has to go. So I love that for a definition of grace and also for a definition of Zen. It is letting go of all the superfluous. And Zen is a philosophy or martial arts and any kind of related philosophy that kind of allows us to experience Zen is one great way to deal with the vicissitudes of life, because the vicissitudes seem so important to us, but very often are basically just the unnecessary, right? The things that we get really caught up in and seem so dramatic and so important are very often just not. They're vicissitudes. They are unnecessary. They are just the ups and downs, and that's just like a flavor of life. It keeps things interesting, but it's not really something that's always worth getting caught up in and upset about. So, a quick review of the 5 pillars. Good physical and mental health. Go for it. If you've got it, keep it. Do whatever you need to do to keep it or to get back to it. Good personal relationships, marriage, family, friendships, your community, foster those things. And if there's something that needs your attention, pay attention to it. If there's something that needs to go, then say goodbye. The faculty for perceiving beauty in art and nature. Work on that if you need to, but this is something really that I think is innate to us as human beings. There is really this sense of beauty and this ability to be in awe of things that we're born to, that is born in us. It's innate. It's really when we put things in the way that we're unable to do it. So sometimes that's going to go back to just letting go of the unnecessary. So you can just truly be there in the present and perceive that beauty. 4, reasonable standards of living and satisfactory work. Do what you need to do to keep those things. Sometimes It's the conversation that I have with a lawyer very often as well. But if we have something that seems pretty decent, then we have a tendency to really be attached to it and scared of losing it. And that's not what I'm talking about. So it's not like you have a great job, you better keep it, or you're going to be on the street and things are going to be terrible, right? You have the ability to get a good job. You can probably get another one if you need to. So we're not attached to it. But if you are expecting to be happy, even though you don't really have, a job or something you can pour yourself into, and you don't have a reasonable standard of living, it's going to be really tough. So you got to take care of what needs to be taken care of first, and then you can build onto it. And then 5, that's philosophical or religious point of view capable of coping successfully with the vicissitudes of life, be it then whatever religion or faith you have, or whatever kind of philosophy. And it can be a very simple philosophy that just sounds like, you know what, this just isn't worth me getting all up in arms about. This thing I just know is just not that important. I don't need to give it power over me. So it's just those 5 things. Easy. It's all you have to do to live a great life and to be happy. And I'm saying that kind of jokingly because it's a lot. Each one of these is really something. But if you take nothing away from this, you weren't paying attention. If you take one thing away from this and nothing else, it could be what of these 5 is the most lacking? What of these 5 do you really feel like that's the one that I got to focus on now? And that's great. If you know what needs your attention, then that is really wonderful. Just like when you throw a punch and you realize my wrist was bent, and I know that because my wrist really hurts right now, then of course that's bad that it happened, but it's good that you recognize this. And this is where it all starts from, is recognizing where we are and then choosing where we're going to go from here. And our meditation is a wonderful tool for that. And for sure, our meditation is a wonderful tool to deal with the vicissitudes of life. So when you sit today, your thoughts are going to come and go, and you'll be able to, just through sitting and going back to the breath, let that kind of even out, let it become more mellow. Thought comes in, and you think, this is something that I really have to stress about right now. Try to just let it go immediately. I'll give you a little extra kick in the pants tonight, because the internal challenge of the week is to do intense focus for 5 minutes. I want you to try for at least the first 5 minutes of this meditation to be intensely focused. And that's kind of different from the way that you might normally meditate, where you're trying to relax into a place of calm focus. This is like, I'm going to hit the ground running with this meditation, and I'm going to immediately kind of really zero in on this focused state, where instead of my mind wandering a bit in the beginning, I'm going to try to keep focused on that breath, be totally present. And as soon as I catch a whiff of a thought, just let it go and immediately return back to the breath. This is distinct from being stressed. I'm not saying have 5 minutes of stressful focus. It's 5 minutes of intense focus, which for many people does have a stressful connotation, but it's I'm totally here, to the exclusion of other thoughts and distractions. And I'm not doing that by pushing them out. I'm doing that by being totally absorbed by and just in love with the breath, to the point where nothing else even enters in. And then when something does enter in, try to let it go. And then at least for the first 5 minutes, that's the feeling. It's like, I am right here. Nothing is going to be in the way between me and this moment, or me and this breath. You'll probably notice that if you're able to pull it off for 5 minutes, you will be able to do the rest of your meditation with a reasonable amount of focus and being present. And you can let go of this intense feeling or any kind of connotation of stress with your meditation. Sit comfortably. Hold. Eyes, spine straight, eyes upturned, relax. Watch the breath. Let go of all thoughts, worries, and cares. Be here now.